Hey everyone, you are watching I Can Code Now, and in this video we'll talk about variables in C++. So variables in any programming language, not just C++, in any language, variables are the foundation of programming because variable allow us to access memory locations with ease, and we can manipulate the values that are stored at memory location very easily using variables. So basically, variables are named memory locations. So using variables, we can easily access and manipulate and modify the values that are stored in memory locations at certain memory locations. Without variables, it would be very hard to access those memory locations and change the values of those memory locations. So in this video, we will talk about variables and different rules that should be kept in mind when defining variables in C++. So the basic syntax, the basic way of defining a variable in C++ is you should define a data type, and then following the data type we provide a name, that variable name, and then optionally we can also provide a value. This here, let me comment it out. So this is the required syntax, and this value here is optional. We need to provide values, but we can also uh, also store a value in the variable in multiple statements. But this part here, this is required whenever we want to define a variable of any data type, we need to define it like this. So the data type can be of any type, for example, an integer or a float. Let me define an int and this variable name, and then I will shortly show you what are the rules that must be kept in mind when defining variable names. But for now, let me name it x, and then let me just give it a simple value. So in this line, memory location is reserved, which is of size int, which is basically 4 bytes. And at that memory location, this value is stored. Now we can easily access that memory location using this variable name, x. There are multiple ways of defining variables, and one other way to define multiple variables in a single statement is as follow. We give it a data type, then variable name, and then another variable name, and so on. We can have any number of variables in a single statement, and those all variables will have the same data type. So for example, if I want to declare a variable y and a variable z and a variable a, I can simply write it as y z a. This is showing error because we can only define a variable name that has not been defined before this statement. So let me just comment these lines out. So the error is gone. So we can simply declare these three variables in a single statement using this multiple declarations syntax. There are certain rules that I discussed earlier, that there are many rules that should be kept in mind when defining a variable name. And one basic rule that we uh, just saw now, that a variable name can only should only be defined only once, and it cannot be redefined. So if I have defined a variable y, I cannot define a new variable with the same name y, or any name for that matter. So the next rule, which is a very basic rule, and you will find this rule in any language, that in any programming language, that the variable can only contain it can only contain letters and digits and uh, or underscore. Right, underscore is this dash character, underscore character. So the variable name can only have one of or any of these. Only these type of characters are allowed in variable names. And the next rule is variable names cannot have spaces or any special characters. So they cannot have spaces. or any special characters. Special characters like star or brackets or and all these are special characters. A variable name cannot have these characters. Then one more important rule is that since letters, digits and underscore is allowed in the variable name, but we can never start a variable name with a digit. So cannot start a variable name with a digit. So a variable name this xy is incorrect because it is starting with a digit and not with any character or an underscore. And one more thing to keep in mind when declaring variables in that in C++ variables are case sensitive, meaning that lowercase letters are differentiated from uppercase letters. Let me just show you. So variables names are case sensitive. So which means that if I declare a variable x, then this is different from another variable which is uppercase x. So these two are different variables. So uppercase letters and lowercase letters both are applicable in defining variables, but both are different when names are compared for variable names. There are also some reserved keywords which are reserved by the languages, and those words cannot be used in as as variable names. For example, we have seen that int is a data type, so we cannot declare a variable name which is called int. So declaring a variable name like int, this is invalid because int here is also a data type and int is a reserved keyword. Similarly, float is a reserved keyword. There are many reserved keywords and in all the programming languages, and similarly in C++ there are reserved keywords, and those reserved keywords cannot be used as variable names. And those reserved keywords can also be not be used for any purpose in language. We will talk about reserved keywords in our future videos. So there are different types of variables. One basic type that we will discuss in this video is local variable. A local variable is something that is defined in a scope, and a scope is something that we can define by using these curly braces. So if I define a variable here which is named inside, and I want to access this variable like printing this variable outside these braces, I cannot access it because the scope of this variable is within these curly braces. So scope defines the lifetime of a variable. So this is a local variable, so its lifetime is between these braces. If I want to access this variable outside these braces, I'll need to define this variable outside these braces, and I'll have to comment it out. So now this variable is accessible outside these braces. So using uninitialized variables is not a good practice because we don't know what value was contained at that memory location where this memory got assigned. So this is why I am getting this warning here. So in order to get rid of the warning, I will just assign it some value. So you see the warning is now gone. You might or might not see this warning on your IDE because different compilers behave differently, and I have also installed some extensions that help me out to see these warnings. So this is a local variable that we have declared inside this brace. This itself is a local variable because we see that it was defined inside these curly braces. So this is also a local variable with respect to this main function, and this was a local variable with respect to these curly braces. We will use local variables throughout our code, and these are very common types of variables. There are also other types of variables, like one type is local variable, and there are global variables. Then there are static variables. Then there are auto variables. Then there are external variables, or we should call it external variables. So for now, local variables are of our interest. We will see global static variables in details when we when we can use those variables basically. And global variable are basically those variables whose value can be accessed throughout the program, anywhere, from anywhere, by anyone, by anything. Those will be a local variable. Their lifetime is basically throughout the whole execution of the program. We will see the details of these other variables in our future videos. If I write something like this is called declaration of variable. And if I write something like this is called the initialization of a variable. So when we declare a variable like this, we simply declare this variable and the memory is allocated. But when we initialize this variable, when through initialization, we can declare the variable by assigning the memory locations, and we can assign the value at that memory location in one single statement. So same goes for the you know other statement where we can declare multiple data data variables in a single statement. So let me just do this. So my 1, my 2, my 3, this is declaration. But if I also want to initialize these values, I want to make this statement initialization, I can just assign these values like so. So here my 1 has value 1, my 2 has value 2, and my 3 has value 3. Also, there are different ways to initialize a variable. So one simple way that we have discussed, that we have seen so far, is this. Take is equal to 44. So this is a simple way to initialize a variable. There is this other way through which we can initialize this variables is equal to. So we can simply just get rid of these equal to's and write this value in curly braces. So this is another way which is called list initialization. This upper way is called copy initialization. And there is this final other way that we can use to declare variables by using these round brackets. This is also a valid way of initializing variables, which is called direct initialization. So all these, there are these three different ways of initializing variables. And if we don't initialize this variable, we can just declare the variable, and we can just go ahead and, you know, uh, assign a value later on in the program. This is also valid. But it is always a good practice to initialize a variable whenever it is declared. If the value to initialize it with is not known at the time of declaration, it is a good practice to initialize it with zero values or invalid values. So if I define a variable x, it is a good practice to initialize it with zeros, so we know that it does not contain garbage values, because if the value is unknown, the program may lead to undefined behaviors when it is executed. So this is it for now about variables. We will see more details of these variable types in our future videos. So in the next video, we'll talk about the keywords that I mentioned earlier. That would be it for now. Thank you so much.